South of Midnight is a third-person action-adventure game set in the American Deep South with a gothic fantasy vibe. The game follows the main character Hazel during a hurricane that wrecks her hometown of Prospero, getting separated from her mother in the process. Getting pulled into a new reality where Deep South legends come to life, she becomes a weaver, a person of magic that fixes heartbroken and damaged spirits. Now, before we get started, I want to talk about something that Xbox did market and something that they did not market. So first off, they've been very, very open about the different big creatures in the game, and then doing so, they're kind of spoiling the different bosses in the game. So if you were like me that didn't really watch a lot of the footage before playing the game, stick away from all that stuff. So I'm not going to include any footage of them in this review because that would kind of suck for all of you watching, right? The thing I saw that Xbox didn't market a whole lot was, yes, the game is stop motion, but outside of cutscenes, you could turn that off. So here's an example with it on. And now here's an example with it off. Now you'll notice most of the gameplay footage I use, I have it turned on because despite the fact I do have chronic migraines and motion sickness issues, I didn't find it that bad. Hopefully the information of those two talking points helps you guys out.
All right now. Okay, y'all take a seat. Y'all take a seat right here, right now.
You know, by far, I think the best thing about this game is the story. It's got some rough patches as far as pacing goes, but overall, just from start to finish, I was very engaged. And really, I feel like a lot of the pacing issues were more towards the beginning of the game. So once you get past those little parts, it just gets really, really, really good. And while the game does warn you at the very beginning, go in a good mood because this gets really depressing. There were a couple of portions where I was just heartbroken, dude. But the game does a really good job of handling these dark subject matters with grace. The game has very fantastic voice acting across the board, really. And you meet a lot of interesting creatures and humans along the way.
God damn.
Oh, she was my favorite. I got so invested in every spirit or human that I tried to save. Each one had a backstory that was told so well. The villains you meet are a bit cliche, but I found them pretty entertaining in that regard. The game only has loading screens between chapters and takes this time to just narrate about what's previously happened. And it's nice for pacing, I think. The art style they use for these loading screens also is super nice.
Used to handling things on her own, she set off downriver to find her house and rescue her ma herself.
So I never really liked Hazel's character. Then I really thought about it. Her character is fresh out of high school, and I hate teenagers.
Youths.
And yes, while she goes through the hero's journey to a small extent and eventually becomes somewhat likable at the end, it just takes too long, which is very frustrating for a 10 to 12 hour game. Not to mention they do the whole, oh my God, I have superpowers. This is crazy. I can't believe this is happening for way too long. And it kind of teeters into that territory of,
did I just do that? I did not just do that.
Luckily, it never gets that bad. And it seems to start ending about 25% of the way through, which is still way too long in this short of a span of a game. But that's the funny thing about this game. Hazel isn't the main character. Like she is, but she's hardly the main focal point. It's really the stories of these people that she meets along the way. And luckily, those are so strong, it far outweighs my complaints about her. When it comes to finding notes and just general lore out in the world in a lot of games, a lot of the times I'll find it very not interesting. But here it's always, from what I saw, very interesting. It usually is important background information that you otherwise would not get about the characters that you are interacting with. Despite the expected, the locations you go to are very varied, which of course I won't show too many of them given spoilers. But that's so important for a game this short because if you have this complacency of just going to the same environments over and over and over again, you start getting bored. Here is a reminder to hit the like button, which leads into almost my only big complaint about the game. The combat is just really boring. Combat is secluded to small, I guess you could say, combat zones.
Goosebumps.
Similar to a game like Okami, which I'm super excited is getting a sequel. Within these combat zones, you'll typically face on average 6 to 8 enemies, to which then you'll be allowed to clear up all the yuckiness of the area. You'll face a variety of different enemies that have different levels of attacks as far as distance goes, and overall special abilities. You yourself will have a variety of different special abilities that I'll kind of dumb down to freezing, kind of like a force pull and a force push, and a sort of control ability that lets you briefly take over an enemy to fight on your side for a small period of time. I think the problem the game has is it introduces all of this stuff way too fast, to the point where enemy variety and powers you get are pretty much all introduced within the first half of the game. And the fact that all of these mobs are all red and black creates this sort of just blob on the screen sometimes that's just an eyesore. It got to the point where about like 75% of the way through, I turned down the difficulty on the combat as low as possible because I just didn't want to have to deal with it. And it just messes with the immersion and the pacing. When you see one of these combat zones, you're like, oh no, I don't want to have to do this, but I gotta. Now, I did turn back up the difficulty anytime I got to a boss because the boss fights are pretty solid. The creature design is really cool. And while again, I don't want to show any of it, if you want to see what they look like, Xbox again has made it pretty easy to find them. But I again implore you to just wait and see for yourselves because I think they look really cool. I think the variety of the boss fights is pretty nice too, but I gotta say the final boss is really disappointing. I won't get into specifics, but you'll see for yourself, and I'm pretty confident you're gonna agree with me as well. Here is a reminder to hit the like button. Now, as far as traversing and parkouring goes, it's all pretty solid. You've got climbing, gliding, wall running, and you'll even use your special abilities to create things out of thin air, move things. You'll break stuff that's in your way. Yet for the most part, it's really boring to look at. And I know that sounds like a nitpicking, but hear me out. First off, this is not a spoiler, or at least I'm gonna try to word this to where it's not a spoiler. There's a portion later in the game where you'll find yourself climbing a clock tower, where you'll be climbing gears and using your powers to kind of fix the clock tower so that you can continue your traversal up. The problem is this only happens a couple of times in the game. Typically, what I've shown you is what you're gonna get. I really wish it was a feature they would have gone more into. So again, the parkouring isn't bad. It's just when you look at the exact same thing pretty much throughout the entire game, and then you get something so unique, just like what I described, it's a pretty major letdown in a sense. You know, I feel like we should all be pretty proud of me that throughout this entire video so far, I have not tried once doing a bad Cajun accent. Now down here on the bayou, we gonna get some shrimp. Down here on the bayou, we gonna get some shrimp. Down here on the bayou, we gonna get some shrimp. Oh, down here on the bayou, we love some shrimp.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
I really like the music in this game, but I don't know if a lot of people necessarily will feel the same way or not. I don't know if I would necessarily, I don't think I would call it a musical, because what's happening is not the characters singing, but a song explaining what's currently happening in extreme detail. What do you call that? It's got there's a word for it, right? And from what I think I can tell, each singing performance is done by one of the voice actors in the game, which I think is a real cool detail. It's like, imagine me in a game and I'm walking down the bayou, right? That's what's currently happening. And all of a sudden you hear a song come on that goes, "Boggins down on the bayou, and hopefully he don't get a alligator." I got to wear my hat again. Now, please don't let that oversimplification of the music reflect on its quality, because I again do think it's really, really good. It might not be for everyone. Also, I personally wasn't a big fan of the first song that I experienced in this regard. So if you kind of feel the same way, keep going with it. I think it'll start to grow on you. So one example I want to give, the lead character's voice actor has a very pretty singing voice, but every time a main character is forced to sing in any kind of capacity in a TV show, movie, whatever have you, I think back to this SNL skit.
Oh, don't make me sing. Oh, don't make me sing. Oh, you're making me sing.
And typically it's always during a performance that's really, really good. Just whatever reason, my mind always goes back to this skit. And it's not even that funny of a skit, just that's how my brain works. And I wanted to share. Here is a reminder to hit the like button. Now, partners, we're entering into Nitpick City. Just a couple of tiny little things that don't really belong anywhere else in the video. There are a couple of funny parts in the game, but I kind of wish they had delved more into that as it went on. For me, it would have been a good palate cleanser between these various serious subject matters. But at the same time, though, if you're, like I said before, handling something with grace and you don't want to seem like you're making less of these things, I kind of get why you don't want to bring in too much humor, but I wish they had upped it just a little bit. I think the other thing too was I noticed with some of the voice acting performances, while they were really, really good, a lot of them didn't have Southern accents that were, you know, you would expect from the area. But at the same time, I suppose you don't want to go into you don't want to offend people thinking they're making fun of their culture or trying to form some kind of parody like a...
Lido, babe!
Now we win a kind of fuck all we go to. That way I get a book all that man better.
Or like this jackass. So in conclusion, I'm a bit torn. I felt like as I went through the game, I was all over the place with my final rating. And anywhere from a 4 to a 7 to a 6 to an 8. I had so many different thoughts in my head about how I was going to go about this. I think I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10. The combat is not good. And outside of my nitpicks, which I would include the parkour probably into that group, I think the characters, the voice acting, and the overall story is really, really strong. And I love the fact that all the subplots tie together so neatly. And again, I do really love the music, though again, I don't think it's gonna be for everyone. At the end of the day, I don't think the boss fights are strong enough to save the just not good combat. And I think it's worthy to bring down my score to a 7 because of it. Combat should never feel that bad to where it makes you hate those portions of the game. So I think 7's a fair score. Do I think it's worth the $40 price tag? I think if it was $10 less, I could say that's pretty good and I would go with it. But of course, that's the beauty of this being on Xbox Game Pass. You can decide for yourself and it won't cost you any extra money. I think it's going to be kind of similar to an Adamfall, where it's not going to be for everyone, but having that utilization of Game Pass allows you to see for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching. Go follow me over on Twitch. I like to stream there, and my schedule's been kind of messy, what with doing all of these different games. But when I do stream, we'd like to do a lot of older content, Xbox 360 era, Xbox One, anything that's not a new release, and sometimes new releases if I get my review copies the day of release, which can happen. So here's your final reminder to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you're new, and it will catch you in the next video.